This is a full-scale, full-size Fokker D.VII. It's owned by a gentleman up in Auburn, Indiana. He's not a pilot, but he's a hobbyist, an enthusiast of aviation. He had it designed and built, and they built the airplane. It took them 17 years. And this summer, Andrew King and I actually flew all the hours off of it, and I got the opportunity to fly it to Oshkosh. This is very interesting. This is my first Dawn Patrol to participate in. I've been at about maybe 4 or 5 as a spectator of the public, but this is my first time flying in. It's an honor to get to fly this airplane that I'm flying and being here on the museum grounds. It's very sacred ground for an aviator, so I'm very honored to be here. You know, what's cool about Dawn Patrol is exactly bringing history back to the community. A lot of history is lost, okay? And it doesn't matter if it's the enemy or the ally, but Dawn Patrol brings in both a lot of, aviation buffs from World War I are here to share their knowledge. And being able to bring the aircraft here is one example to show you what was actually flown and how it was flown. You know, honestly, the D-VII is the F-16 of World War I. So you could put that together, what an F-16 is, and you look at this airplane in 1918, this was the aircraft to beat. And it could not be outmaneuvered, and it was built to fly very easily. So being here to share the stories, to share the history, the flying aces that flew the aircraft is, something that I've always been, I guess, involved with, because I like barnstorming. I like sharing my barnstorming era. The World War I stuff, I'm not a very good guru on that, but it's still fun to share the airplane and share my experience, how it flies, and get to show it to the public. I started model airplanes when I was 7, but full scale when I was 18. So I've been flying almost 30 years now. I started in high school. This Fokker D.VII is a 1918 replica, but I would say last October, I got to fly a 1917 standard J1 with an actual Hisso engine out in California, and I got to take a rider up. And to me, that is the highlight of my aviation career, in flying vintage antique airplanes. And then I would say second was a Ryan ST, which is the only Ryan ST flying in the world. I got to fly it down to Alabama. And I would say this is probably like the top 10, but it is an honor to get to fly this airplane because it's the only one like it, and it's here at the museum. I got to take the aircraft up to Oshkosh this year. It was the first time the aircraft actually left Auburn, Indiana. The airplane was finished in 2009 and never was certified to fly to leave the airport since 2009. So they have that, the privilege to fly the airplane into the largest air show in the world was great. We got to park it in the vintage area where I had my other aircraft. It was very popular, the D.VII, because there's not that many of them out even at museums and things. So for someone to actually see the airplane and see the size of the aircraft, it's a very large World War I aircraft. The only difference of this airplane is the engine. Originally it had a Mercedes engine, and this one has a de Havilland Gypsy Queen 30, and it's about a 240 horse engine. And we have actually disc brakes on the aircraft and a tail wheel. So that is really the only thing that is different. The wings are still wood. They're covered in fabric. The fuselage, the Germans were the first ones to ever use steel tubing. So this aircraft is built with steel tubing and welded together, covered in fabric. So it's a very original, full size, all the flight controls, everything are pretty much to the exact Fokker scale drawings. I tell people I get to fly the most advanced aircraft and the most, or the oldest aircraft in the world. So here's 1918, I've flown 1917, I've flown some of the most advanced military aircraft as a contractor. So my aviation career is actually, it's been a blessing and just an honor, you know, growing up here in the Dayton area and getting the opportunity to fly some of the most unique aircraft in the world that spans well over 100 years is just great. I own Good Folk and Old Time Biplane Rides. I have a 1929 Travel Air 4000 and a 1930 D-25 New Standard, which there's only 6 of them in the world that's flying today. So both of those aircraft have such a huge significance in commercial air travel in the world today. And it's an honor that I'm a person that gets to keep the aircraft, share it with the community, and actually offer rides to the community and the surrounding states and things like that. So just being here at Dawn Patrol is just one example of sharing to the community. The aircraft flies like a vintage airplane. It's very pitch sensitive, but the roll is very stiff. But it's a very stable aircraft. The landing is actually probably the easiest part. You can wheel land it or full stall land it. It's very unique because the first time I flew it, I thought it would be a little bit squirrely on the ground, but it was not. It tracks very true. These are very unique tires. These are 30 by 3.5s, and I don't even know, we call these unattainable. But this Falcon prop, this is a 9870 pitch prop. Falcon went out of business. It's a little bit over propped right now. We're going to get a new prop made. We're going to actually get one. When I say 98, it means it's 98 inches long, and the pitch here is 70 degrees. So we're going to get a 95-55 to actually give the engine a little bit more breathing room, and so it's not overloading the engine. Inside here is the engine. This is a de Havilland Gypsy Queen 30. It's actually an engine that should be inverted. And what they did when they designed the aircraft, they made the engine upright and had to make a new oil scavenge system so the engine would run. So this is really like the first Gypsy Queen 30, I believe, to run in an upright position, and it runs really well. Taking off, I get about 1,750 RPMs, and with the new prop, we're hoping to get about 2,100. All right. This is one thing unique about the Fokker. It's a cantilever wing. So when they first flew the D.VII, they didn't have any flying wires. As you can tell, there's no flying wires in the aircraft, but you do not need these struts. So the first time they flew these aircraft, they did not have struts on the outer wing here, but the pilots didn't like seeing the wings moving. So they put these struts here to kind of make them move together. All right, but Fokker, the DR1 and the D.VII, there's no flying wires, so that reduces a lot of drag. This is an actual airfoil. This is one thing that's unique because for American aircraft, the Travel Air like what I have, they called them Wichita Fokkers because Travel Air made a lot of aircraft look like a Fokker aircraft. So what makes a Fokker airplane look unique is the ailerons here. We call these elephant ear ailerons. They go outside the wingtip, and this is for some reason, it's just a nickname that they call them, elephant ear ailerons. But Travel Airs had the same design in Wichita, okay, when they built the aircraft. So a lot of World War I aircraft, this is what they look like here. This is just wire, steel wire, and then when they cover it, it pulls the wire in, and that's what it makes it look like. Probably the hardest part of the airplane to build is the spars. It's a double tapered spar. It's a very unique spar. It takes a lot of, the engineering on this airplane is well superb to any British or French airplane. That's why it was a superb aircraft in its day. These are, everything's replica Spindel guns. Great. It's pretty much stick and rudder, right? Everything is stick and rudder. It has a rudder bar, no rudder pedals.
Yeah, I didn't notice it until you said it about the wires.
Yep.
That's incredible.
So like the Newports and things, they're all made out of wood, and then they have wires in the fuselage that true it up. This doesn't have any of this. This is all steel tubing. The Germans made, you know, I believe the D.VII is the first German aircraft made with steel tubing and is welded together. So it made it a lot easier for them to build it. They didn't have to have a cabinet maker make them. So here's the stabilizer, elevator.
Fantastic.
One thing that was unique about the airplane also, the engine had a Mercedes, a 4-cylinder Mercedes. I believe it was like 150 or 160 horse, but it was almost 1,000 cubic inches. So in World War I, a lot of the pilots would get up real high and then they can dive down and attack. Well, this aircraft was the only one that you could stay low, and with that big engine, it could actually point its nose up in the air and shoot up at the aircraft coming down, and it wouldn't stall. So it was a very unique, it almost could hover. And that's what made it a very unique aircraft to fight in World War I. It has a tail wheel. Originally, it would not have a tail wheel. It would have a tail skid. All aircraft back then had tail skids and no brakes, but this flies on asphalt. This is kept in Auburn, Indiana, and you have to land on the asphalt there. So that's why it has brakes, which are motorcycle brakes, and it has a tail wheel on it.
Fantastic.
On the wing, the top of the wing, it says Julie. So the flying ace, the pilot in World War I, he had his girlfriend's name, which was Mimi. Well, Julie is the owner's wife, so he thought he'd get good brownie points to put his wife's name on it. He said he didn't get any brownie points for it because she doesn't like airplanes like he does, so it's kind of funny. But originally it would have Mimi on the top wing.
Nice touch.
Yeah,
that's great.
We have a bullet hole from World War I here also, you know, but it should be flyable.
That's fantastic.
We can come around this side. You can look at it real quick. You can see the exhaust. This thing sounds like a John Deere tractor when it's running. I'm only running about 1,400 RPM at cruise, so it's very slow and very, it sounds just very good. It's not like a car engine. This is the cockpit. We'll do a little walk around or talk about the cockpit area. It's pretty simple. It's a VFR only airplane, which means visual flight rules, no instrumentation. There is an electrical system for the ignition system because we're running 2 ignition systems on this engine. But right here is the tachometer. This is the engine speed, okay? This has the very basic instrumentation for any aircraft. Here's the fuel. Okay, holds 23 gallons of gas. This is our altimeter. This tells us how high we are. Okay, here's our airspeed indicator. Old airplanes is always in miles per hour. When people talk about knots, they're talking about boats. And but this is in miles an hour. This cruises about 90 miles an hour with the current prop. Then we have a couple switches here, our battery, a spare switch, fuel pump, alternator. This is the temperature, oil temperature, cylinder head temperature, and here's our oil pressure. This is also circuit breakers for the ignition. Here's our fuel shut off. That's off, that's on. It's good to be off because now your leg would hit that if you're trying to take off with the fuel off. Control stick. This will be the machine gun triggers. Operates each one, so you can shoot both at the same time, or you can shoot one at a time. All right. Here's our throttle and our mixture control. And down here on the floor is this is called a rudder bar. So you put your feet on there and it works. This is how they would operate in World War I. It just was a bar and had no brakes. But we have down in the floor, those are brakes, independent brakes for each wheel.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And a
There's-
seatbelt.
Yep, we have a 5-point or 4-point harness here. Well, it's not 4, it's 3. But you can see there's no luggage area, no room for anything. So when you're traveling, you better have someone driving a car or whatever, because there's just no room to put anything in the aircraft while we're flying around. You could probably wear a parachute, a bailout rig, but it would be very uncomfortable if you had to fly it for any extended period of time. You can see that the seat's pretty narrow. So flying up to Oshkosh, it probably took me every bit of about 8 hours to get there. So, you know, it wears you out pretty quickly.